I was not kicked out of the house or scolded at the dinner table. I was simply deleted in a group text the entire family saw. My mother posted about a Mother's Day dinner for her successful children and tagged my 3 siblings, but left me out. The terrifying part was that nobody asked where I was. I did not argue. I just did something that made them panic years later. I disappeared completely, silent and clean, as if I never existed. My name is Kendall Mercer. I am 27 years old, and I smell like frozen onions and industrial sanitizer. That is the first thing you need to know about me because it is the first thing my mother notices whenever I walk through her front door. It does not matter if I have scrubbed my skin raw with peppermint soap or soaked my hands in lemon juice until the cuticles sting. The scent of Frostvale Kitchens is not just on me. It is in me. It has seeped into the pores of my skin and the fibers of my hair and settled deep in the marrow of my bones. I live in Briar Glen, Pennsylvania. It is one of those towns that looks charming on a postcard, but feels like a cage when you are living paycheck to paycheck inside it. We have the quaint Main Street with the antique shops that tourists visit on weekends, and we have the darker, grittier edge where the real work happens. I belong to the edge. My shift ends at 6 in the morning. When the buzzer sounds across the production floor, it is loud enough to rattle your teeth. I spent last night standing in one spot on the line watching trays of lasagna slide past me at a speed of 40 trays per minute. My job is quality control for the packaging seal. I check for air bubbles. I check for tears in the plastic. I check to make sure the expiration date is stamped clearly on the corner. It is mind-numbing work. It is the kind of work that makes your legs swell and your lower back throb with a dull, persistent ache that never really goes away. But it pays $22 an hour. And with the overnight differential and the mandatory overtime I picked up last week, it pays the mortgage on the house that my mother pretends she owns outright. I walked out of the factory doors this morning into the gray light of dawn. The air was wet and cold. I unzipped my heavy coat just enough to fish out my car keys. My hands were rough. They are not the hands of a 27-year-old woman should have. They are calloused and dry with short, unpainted nails that I keep trimmed to the quick. I looked at them and thought about my sister Marina. Marina has hands that look like they belong in a jewelry commercial. She is 30 years old and is the director of marketing for a tech startup in Philadelphia. She comes home for holidays wearing cashmere sweaters that cost more than my weekly take-home pay. Her nails are always done in soft, neutral tones that suggest she has never touched anything dirtier than a latte cup. Then there is Ethan. He is 32. He is finishing his residency at a prestigious hospital in Boston. He is the golden boy, the firstborn, the doctor. When he calls home, he talks about rounds and attendings and difficult cases, and my mother listens to him with a look of rapture on her face that I have never seen directed at me. And finally there is Paige, the baby, 24 years old, and in her second year of law school. She is stressed and tired, but it is a noble kind of tired. It is the exhaustion of the intellect. It is the fatigue of someone who is going places. I got into my beat-up sedan and turned the key. The engine sputtered before catching. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel for a moment. I was not going places. I was staying right here. I was the anchor. I was the one keeping the ship from drifting out to sea and crashing against the rocks. My father died 4 years ago. It was a heart attack, quick and brutal. One minute he was mowing the lawn on a Saturday afternoon, and the next minute he was gone. He did not leave behind a fortune. He left behind a mountain of hidden debt and a wife who had never balanced a checkbook in her life. Janice Mercer broke when he died. I do not mean she grieved. I mean she shattered. She could not function. She could not navigate the insurance calls or the bank notices or the funeral arrangements. Ethan was in med school. Marina was climbing the corporate ladder. Paige was in college. They all flew in for the funeral, cried beautifully in their black designer clothes, and then flew back to their important lives. I was the one who stayed. I was 23 then. I had dreams. I had a plan to move to Pittsburgh and study graphic design. I had a portfolio and a roommate lined up. But when the foreclosure notice came in the mail 3 months after Dad died, I did not pack my bags. I unpacked them. I took the job at Frostvale because they were hiring immediately and they offered health insurance. I used my savings to pay the arrears on the mortgage. I sat at the kitchen table night after night with a calculator and a stack of terrifying envelopes, figuring out how to keep the lights on and the water running. I became the man of the house because there was nobody else to do it. My mother never asked me to do it. She just assumed it would happen. She assumed the house would stay warm and the fridge would stay full. She treated her grief like a full-time job that exempted her from reality. And I enabled her. I told myself I was being a good daughter. I told myself that family supports family. I drove home through the quiet streets of Briar Glen. When I pulled into the driveway of the colonial-style house on Elm Street, the lawn was perfectly manicured. I paid a neighborhood kid $40 a week to keep it that way because Mom said long grass looked trashy. I entered through the back door to avoid tracking factory dirt onto the hardwood floors of the foyer. The house was silent. Mom was probably still asleep. I took off my steel-toed boots and left them on the rubber mat by the washing machine. I stripped off my work uniform, the thick blue pants and the heavy cotton shirt with the Frostvale logo on the pocket, and shoved them directly into the washer. I could not risk the smell traveling. I showered until the hot water ran out. I scrubbed my skin with a loofah until it turned red. Then I put on a pair of sweatpants and an old t-shirt and walked into the kitchen to make coffee. The kitchen was spotless. My mother is obsessive about appearances. The granite countertops gleamed. The stainless steel appliances shone. On the refrigerator, perfectly centered, were 3 framed magnets. One was a photo of Ethan in his white coat. One was a clipping from a business magazine featuring Marina. One was a picture of Paige accepting a mock trial award. There was no picture of me. I stood there staring at the fridge while the coffee brewed. It was not that I wanted a picture of me in a hairnet holding a box of frozen lasagna. I understood that my life was not photogenic, but the absence of my face felt like a statement. It felt like a redaction. My mother walked in a few minutes later. She was wearing a silk robe, and her hair was already brushed. Janice Mercer does not do messy mornings. She is a pillar of the community. She is the treasurer of the Briar Glen Women's Club and a deaconess at the First Baptist Church. Her reputation is her currency. "Oh," she said when she saw me. She stopped mid-step, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. "You're home." "Shift just ended," I said. I poured a cup of coffee. "Morning, Mom. Did you take the trash out?" she asked. She walked to the window and peered out at the driveway. "The truck comes in an hour." "I will do it," I said. I just sat down. "Well, do not forget," she said. She turned to me, her expression tightening slightly. "And Kendall, please move your car off the street. Mrs. Gable across the street made a comment yesterday about how it looks. That rust spot on the fender is an eyesore." "I am parked in the driveway," I said, keeping my voice even. "Good," she said. She opened the fridge and reached for the creamer. She paused, her hand hovering over the magnets. She adjusted the picture of Ethan by a millimeter, so it was perfectly straight. "Ethan called last night. He might be coming home for Mother's Day." "That is nice," I said. "It will be wonderful," she corrected me. "I want everything to be perfect. We should repaint the guest room. The blue is looking a little faded." She looked at me expectantly. She did not say you need to pay for the paint and do the labor. She just said we should. That was how she operated. She floated ideas, and I was the one who had to build the scaffolding to support them. "I can pick up some paint next week," I said, staring into my black coffee. "Make sure it is the premium kind," she said. "Cheap paint peels. Cheap paint peels." That was rich coming from a woman who had not earned $1 in 4 years. I wanted to scream. I wanted to slam my mug down on the counter and scream that I had worked 60 hours this week so she could live in a house with premium paint. I wanted to tell her that my back felt like it was on fire and that my hands were cramping, but I did not. I swallowed the rage like I always did. I swallowed it because I was waiting for the moment where it would pay off. I was waiting for the moment where she would look at me with the same pride she had for Ethan. I was waiting for her to say, "Thank you. Kendall, thank you for saving us." I remembered a barbecue we had last summer. It was the 4th of July. All the siblings were home. The backyard was full of neighbors and church friends. Ethan was holding court by the grill, telling stories about the ER. Marina was showing off her new Audi in the driveway. Paige was debating politics with the pastor. I was in the kitchen, refilling the potato salad and making sure the ice bucket was full. I had paid for the steaks. I had paid for the beer. I had woken up at 6 in the morning to marinate the chicken. A woman from the church, Mrs. Higgins, cornered me near the sliding glass door. She was holding a glass of wine and smiling that tight, judgmental smile that older women in this town perfected. "Kendall, dear," she said, "we barely see you around. Your mother tells us so much about Ethan and Marina, and Paige is doing so well in law school. What are you up to these days?" My mother was standing right there. She froze. I saw her spine stiffen. I saw the panic flash in her eyes. She did not want Mrs. Higgins to know that her daughter worked the graveyard shift at a factory. She did not want the Mercer family brand tarnished by blue-collar reality. I opened my mouth to speak. I was going to say, "I work at Frostvale. I am a shift lead." But Mom cut in. She laughed. A high, tinkling sound that sounded like breaking glass. "Oh, Kendall is taking some time," Mom said, waving her hand dismissively. "She is just finding her direction. You know how millennials are. She is exploring her options." Mrs. Higgins nodded sympathetically. "Of course, it takes some children longer to launch than others." They looked at me with pity. Benign, suffocating pity. I stood there holding a bowl of potato salad, and I felt myself shrinking. I wanted to throw the bowl on the floor. I wanted to shout. I launched 4 years ago. I am the only reason this house hasn't been auctioned off on the courthouse steps. I am the reason you are eating steak instead of hot dogs. But I looked at my mother's face. She looked terrified. She looked like she was begging me to play along. She needed the lie. She needed the illusion of perfection more than she needed the truth. So I smiled. It was a weak, pathetic smile. "Right," I said. "Just exploring." I walked away and hid in the laundry room for 20 minutes. I sat on top of the dryer and stared at the wall. That was the moment I should have left. That was the moment I should have realized that nothing I did would ever be enough. But hope is a dangerous drug. I kept thinking that if I just worked harder, if I just carried a little more weight, eventually the scales would tip. Eventually, she would have to see me. Back in the kitchen, the morning sun was hitting the granite counter. My mother was making toast. "Oh, by the way," she said casually, "the assessment for the Homeowners Association is due next week. It is $400 this year." She did not ask if I had it. She did not ask if I could afford it. She just stated the number like it was a weather report. "I will handle it," I said. "Good," she said. "We do not want to be on the delinquent list. Imagine how embarrassing that would be." She took a bite of her toast. She looked content. She looked safe. I finished my coffee in one long gulp. The liquid was hot, but I barely felt it. I was numb. I looked at her. This woman who had given birth to me. This woman whose house I was holding up with my own 2 hands. And I realized something terrifying. She did not love me for who I was. She did not even love me for what I did. She loved the silence I provided. She loved that I was the invisible machinery that kept her stage set running. I walked to the sink and rinsed my mug. I looked at my reflection in the window above the faucet. I looked tired. I looked older than 27. I used to think that if I did the right thing, I would be loved. I used to think that loyalty was a currency that gathered interest over time. I was wrong. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and turned to leave the room. My mother did not look up from her phone. She was probably texting Ethan, or Marina, or anyone who was not me. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, the heavy thud of my boots echoing in the hallway. I closed the door and locked it. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the calendar on the wall. Mother's Day was 3 weeks away. I did not know it then, but the clock was already ticking. I did not know that I was walking toward a cliff. I thought I was just tired. I thought I was just having a bad morning. But the truth was clearer than the morning light. I just refused to look at it directly. I laid back on the pillow and closed my eyes, but sleep did not come. Instead, a single thought rotated in my mind, sharp and cold as a knife blade. I had been operating under a misunderstanding my entire life. I thought we were a family, but we were not a family. We were a corporation, and I was not a daughter. I was an employee. And the worst part? I was an employee without a contract, working for a boss who was ashamed to admit she had hired me. I lay there in the silence of the house I paid for, and I realized something that made my chest tight. I realized that love in my house had conditions like a contract, and I was the only one who didn't have a copy of the fine print. The vibration against my thigh felt like a phantom nerve spasm. It was persistent and aggressive, buzzing against the thick denim of my work pants like an insect trying to burrow into my skin. I peeled off my thermal gloves. My fingers were stiff and pale, the tips numb from 6 hours of handling frozen packaging in a room kept at 34 degrees Fahrenheit. I was sitting on a plastic crate in the loading bay because the actual break room was crowded with the second shift crew, and the air in there smelled like microwaved fish and stale cigarettes. Here, in the bay, it just smelled like diesel exhaust and cold cardboard. I rubbed my hands together, trying to generate enough friction to make my touchscreen respond. It was Mother's Day. I knew what the notification was before I even looked, every year. The Mercer family performed a digital pageant of affection. It was a choreographed dance of adoration where my siblings competed to see who could write the most poetic tribute to Janice Mercer on social media. I usually just sent a card and a text. I knew my role. I was the audience, not the lead actor. I tapped the screen. The blue light washed over my face. Harsh in the dim industrial lighting of the bay, it was a notification from the group chat titled, Mercer Family. My heart gave a little jump. Despite everything, despite the cold coffee in my thermos, despite the ache in my lower back, despite the conversation about the paint last week, I still had that reflexive, pathetic hope that comes with being a daughter. I thought maybe she was sending a picture of the flowers I had sent. I had spent $80 on a bouquet of lilies and hydrangeas. I had paid extra for the rush delivery to make sure they arrived before noon. I unlocked the phone. The message was from Mom. It was a long block of text, composed with the careful, flowery cadence she reserved for public announcements, even though this was a private chat. My dearest hearts, she wrote. I have been reflecting all morning on the blessings of motherhood. There is no greater joy than watching your children rise to their potential and conquer the world. To celebrate the incredible paths you have carved out, I have booked a table for a special Mother's Day dinner tonight at the Gilded Oak at 7 o'clock. This is a celebration for the children who make me proud every single day with their achievements. Then came the tags. She tagged Ethan. She tagged Marina. She tagged Paige. She did not tag me. I stared at the screen. I blinked, sure that my eyes were playing tricks on me in the low light. I scrolled down, thinking perhaps my name had been bumped to the next line. I thought maybe she had made a typo. I thought maybe the signal in the factory was bad and the rest of the message had not loaded yet. But the message ended there. Ethan Marina Page, please dress formally. This is a night for excellence. The silence in the loading bay suddenly felt deafening. The distant hum of the conveyor belts and the beep of a forklift in reverse faded into white noise. All I could hear was the rushing of blood in my ears. It was not just an omission, it was a surgical excision. I sat there, my breath hitching in my chest, creating a small cloud of fog in the freezing air. I waited. I stared at the bottom of the chat window, waiting for the little gray bubble that indicated someone was typing. Surely Ethan would say something. He was the golden boy, but he was not cruel. Surely he would type, "Hey Mom, you forgot Kendall." Surely Paige would notice. She was studying law. She was trained to spot details. She would say, "Is Kendall coming separately?" But the typing bubble did not appear. Instead, the reactions started coming in. Ethan liked the message, a thumbs-up emoji, then a text. "Sounds great. Mom, I will bring the wine. See you at 7. Marina hearted the message, a pink heart emoji, then, "The Gilded Oak. I love their scallop risotto. Can't wait to celebrate you. Mom, you deserve the best. Paige sent a string of party popper emojis. I will be there right after my study group. Love you. They replied within 2 minutes of each other. Bing, bing, bing. 3 notifications, 3 affirmations. 3 people accepting the premise that the dinner table had 4 seats, and I was not in any of them. Nobody asked, "Where is Kendall?" Nobody asked, "Did you mean to leave her out?" I watched the screen until it went black. I saw my own reflection in the dark glass. I looked pale. I looked like a ghost. And in the digital world of the Mercer family, that is exactly what I was. A ghost haunting a group chat, watching the living make plans. My finger hovered over the keyboard. I could type something. I could force the issue. I could write. Am I invited? Or what about me? But as I looked at their joyful, oblivious replies, a wave of nausea rolled over me. If I asked, I would be the charity case. If I asked, Mom would say, "Oh, of course. Darling, it was a slip of the finger." And then I would go to the dinner and sit there knowing I was an afterthought. I would sit there knowing that my presence was a correction, not a desire. Then, the 3 gray dots appeared again. My stomach unclenched slightly. Here it comes. I thought, here is the apology. She realized. She is typing. Oh my goodness. Kendall, I am so sorry. I watched the dots dance. They pulsed rhythmically. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The message popped up. It was from Marina. Mom, should I wear the red dress or the black one? I want to match the vibe. The nausea turned into something else, something cold and hard and heavy, like a stone dropping into a well. They did not care. It was not that they hated me. Hate requires energy. Hate requires acknowledgement. This was worse than hate. This was indifference. To them, my absence was as natural as gravity. Why would you invite the stagehand to the awards ceremony? Why would you invite the mechanic to the victory lap? My phone buzzed again. Long and insistent this time. The screen lit up with a video call request. Incoming video call. Mom. I stared at her contact photo. It was a picture of her from the 4th of July barbecue, holding a glass of iced tea and laughing. She looked radiant. She looked like a woman who had never worried about a foreclosure notice in her life. My thumb hovered over the green answer button. If I answered, she would be smiling. She would probably be holding up a dress or showing me the table setting. She would act as if everything was normal. She would act as if she had not just publicly erased me in front of my siblings, or worse. She would give me that pitying look, the one she gave me when Mrs. Higgins asked about my career, and she would say something patronizing. I let it ring. The phone vibrated against my frozen palm. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings. I imagined her on the other end, frowning slightly at her screen, wondering why her service provider was not answering the summons. She was not used to being ignored. She was the sun, and we were the planets, kept in orbit by the gravity of her expectations. 4 rings, 5 rings. The call disconnected. The screen went dark again. Missed call. I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. The air in the loading bay felt thinner, sharper. 30 seconds later, a text message arrived. This one was not in the group chat. It was a direct message, a private sidebar. I opened it. I tried to call you, she wrote. I assume you are working or sleeping. I just wanted to make sure you understood about tonight. This dinner is really focused on celebrating the specific professional milestones the others have hit this year. Ethan's residency, Marina's promotion, Paige's law review acceptance. I did not want you to feel uncomfortable or pressured to sit through talk about careers when you are still figuring things out. You understand, don't you? You are still family, of course. We will do a lunch, just the 2 of us, sometime soon. I read the message twice. Uncomfortable. Figuring things out. We will do a lunch. She framed my exclusion as an act of mercy. She was protecting me. She was sparing me the embarrassment of sitting at the table with the successful children. She was telling me, in polite, loving language, that I was not good enough to break bread with them on a holiday. I did not feel the sting of tears. That was the surprise. I expected to cry. I expected to feel that hot, choking sensation in my throat that I had felt at the barbecue. Or when she asked for the paint. Or when she adjusted the magnets on the fridge. But I did not cry. Instead, I felt a distinct, audible click in the back of my mind. It was the sound of a breaker tripping. It was the sound of a heavy steel door sliding shut and locking into place. For 4 years, I had been operating on the fuel of hope. I had been paying bills and scrubbing floors and working double shifts because I thought I was buying my way back into the inner circle. I thought I was paying dues. I thought that if I sacrificed enough, I would earn the title of daughter again. But this message made the reality undeniable. There was no membership to earn. I was not a prospect. I was the help. I looked at the phrase, "You are still family, of course." It was a lie. I was not family. I was a utility. I was electricity. I was running water. You do not invite the electricity to dinner. You only notice it when it goes out. The realization was not painful. It was clarifying. It was like stepping out of a fog into sharp, high-definition daylight. The guilt that had weighed on me for years, the guilt of not being enough, of not being a doctor or a director, evaporated instantly. I did not have to be enough for them, because they were not my family. They were a group of people I had been subsidizing with my life. I took off my other glove. My movements were calm and precise. I pressed the volume button and the power button on the side of my phone simultaneously. Snap. I took a screenshot of the group chat message where I was excluded. Snap. I took a screenshot of the private message where she justified it. I saved them to a new folder on my phone. I did not reply to her text. I did not type, "I understand." I did not type, "That hurts." I did not type, "Screw you." I simply closed the messaging app. The buzzer sounded for the end of the break. The loud, jarring noise echoed through the warehouse, signaling that the machinery was ramping back up to full speed. The line was moving again. The frozen lasagna trays were waiting. I stood up. My legs felt strong. The fatigue was still there, but it felt distant, like it belonged to a different person. I looked at the phone one last time before sliding it into my locker. If I was not successful enough to be at the table, then I was certainly not successful enough to pay for the table. If they could delete me from a dinner reservation with a single omission, then I could delete myself from their lives, and I would do it with the same efficiency I used to inspect packaging seals. I would check for leaks, I would check for weaknesses, and then I would seal the package and send it down the line. I walked back onto the factory floor. The air was freezing, but for the first time in years, I did not feel cold. I felt the burning, absolute heat of a bridge beginning to burn. I picked up my inspection tool, I stepped up to the line, and I began to disappear. I did not scream. I did not throw a vase against the wall. I did not drive my car off the bridge. I sat at the scratched laminate table in the break room of Frostvale Kitchens with a spiral-bound notebook and a black ballpoint pen. The factory was quiet during the shift change. The day crew was filtering out, and the night crew was shuffling in, a tide of tired bodies swapping places. I sat in the corner, invisible as always, and drew a vertical line down the center of a blank page. On the left side, I wrote, "Stay." On the right side, I wrote, "Disappear." I looked at the words. They looked like legal terms. They looked like a verdict. I started listing the reasons to stay. I wrote, "Mom needs help." I wrote, "It is my house too." I wrote, "Family obligation." Then I looked at the right column. The pen moved faster there. It felt like the ink was flowing with less resistance. They do not see me. I am an ATM with a pulse. I am tired. I am not invited to dinner. The list on the right grew longer. It spilled past the halfway mark of the page. It detailed the indignities of the last 4 years, the snide comments about my boots, the way Marina looked at my fingernails, the silence in the group chat, the way I was introduced to neighbors as a project rather than a person. "You are making a list," a voice said. I looked up. Tasha Reed was standing there, holding 2 cups of vending machine coffee that smelled like burnt hazelnuts. Tasha was 45, divorced. and the best forklift operator in the tri-state area. She had seen me through my father's funeral and through 3 years of mandatory overtime. She knew where the bodies were buried because she had helped me shovel the dirt. She set the coffee down and tapped the notebook with a chipped fingernail. "That is not a list, Kendall," she said. "That is a confession." "I am just thinking," I said. "You are not thinking," Tasha said. Sitting opposite me, she took a sip of the hot liquid and grimaced. "You are looking for permission. You want the math to tell you it is okay to leave." I looked down at the notebook. "The math says I am an idiot for staying this long." "Then stop being an idiot," she said. It was not mean. It was factual. Tasha did not do comfort. She did truth. "They went to a fancy dinner without you, right? They are eating steak while you are eating a vending machine honey bun. What more data do you need?" "It is complicated," I said. "The finances are tangled." "Untangle them," Tasha said. "You have scissors. Use them." She stood up, drained her cup, and walked toward the time clock. "Shift starts in 5. Decide if you are working for a paycheck or for a pat on the head you are never going to get." I sat there for another minute. Then I closed the notebook. I did not tear out the page. I kept it. I wanted the evidence. I worked the shift on autopilot. My hands moved trays and checked seals. But my mind was in a different room. I was inside the spreadsheet of my life, looking for the rows I could delete. When I got home at 6 in the morning, the house was silent. They were all asleep. The remnants of their night were scattered in the living room. Ethan's coat thrown over the banister. A gift bag with tissue paper spilling out on the coffee table. A card that said, "Best mom ever" sat on the mantelpiece. I walked past it all like a burglar. I went to my room, locked the door, and opened my laptop. This was not going to be a dramatic exit. I was not going to burn clothes on the front lawn. I was going to cut them off with the cold. Hard precision of a forensic accountant. I logged into the bank account, the joint account, the one my father had set up, the one I had poured my paychecks into for 4 years to keep the balance positive. I scrolled through the automatic payments: mortgage, water, gas, electricity, cable/internet bundle, streaming services, lawn care service. I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. I started to track exactly whose name was on what. This was the twist. This was the knife in my gut that I had been twisting myself without realizing it. When Dad died, Mom had been helpless. She did not know the passwords. She did not know the login IDs. I had taken over everything. I had put the utilities in my name because her credit score had taken a hit during the probate period. I had put the internet in my name because I was the one who called Comcast to negotiate the rate. I looked at the withdrawals for the last month. The electric bill was $300. The cable package, the one with the premium sports channels that Ethan insisted we needed for when he visited, was $240. The high-speed internet required for Marina's video calls when she worked remotely from here was $90. I did the math. I had been paying nearly $700 a month for utilities in a house where I was treated like a squatter, and I had been doing it under the guise of temporary help. I remembered the conversation clearly. 3 years ago, Mom had said, "Just handle it for now, Kendall, until the insurance settles." The insurance had settled 2 years ago. She had never asked to take the bills back, and I, like a trained dog waiting for a treat, had never asked her to. I stared at the screen. My finger hovered over the mouse. A wave of nausea hit me. It was the conditioning. It was the deep-seated fear that if I stopped paying, the world would fall apart. I had been raised to believe that being good meant fixing things. If the lights went out, it would be my fault. If the internet cut off, Mom would be upset. Mom would be upset. The thought paralyzed me for a second. Then I looked at the screenshot on my phone. Mother's Day dinner. Successful kids only. They were successful. Surely. Successful people could pay their own electric bill. I clicked, "Cancel service." The confirmation box popped up. "Are you sure you want to disconnect service for 42 Elm Street?" I clicked yes. I went to the cable provider's website. Cancel service. I went to the streaming platforms. Netflix, Hulu, HBO, the ones Marina used, the ones Ethan used, change password, log out of all devices. I did not cancel those. I just changed the password to something random string of numbers and letters that only I knew. I was paying for them. After all, they were mine. I went to the bank website. I removed the overdraft protection that linked my savings account to the joint checking account. Then came the hardest part, the direct deposit. I opened the portal for Frostvale's payroll system. I deleted the routing number for the joint account. I entered the routing number for a new account I had opened online 3 months ago, an account I had named Escape Fund, but had been too afraid to use. I routed 100% of my paycheck to the new account. I sat back in my chair. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from adrenaline. It was done. The flow of resources had been severed. It would take a billing cycle for them to notice. The lights wouldn't go out today. The internet wouldn't die this second. But the clock had started. I was not just leaving the room. I was taking the floorboards with me. I looked at my phone. The Mercer family group chat was still active. There were photos from last night. A selfie of the three of them, Ethan, Marina, Paige, smiling with Mom at a table covered in white linen. They looked beautiful. They looked complete. I went to the group settings. Mute notifications. Always. Then I went to the contacts list. I tapped on Mom. Block caller. I tapped on Ethan. Block caller. I tapped on Marina. Block caller. I hesitated at Paige. Paige was the youngest. She was 24. She was in law school, drowning in debt and anxiety. She had not spoken up in the group chat, but she had sent the party poppers. She was complicit. But she was also the only one who ever looked at me with something other than pity. Sometimes, when Mom was on a rant about appearances, I would catch Paige rolling her eyes. I needed a window. I needed a way to see the fire I had just lit without getting burned by the flames. I left Paige unblocked. It was not because I trusted her. It was a strategic decision. I wanted to see who would be the first one to break the silence with the truth. I wanted to see how long it would take for the successful siblings to realize that the servant had quit. I closed the laptop. The room was quiet. It was 8 in the morning. Normally, I would be asleep by now. But my heart was hammering against my ribs. I lay down on the bed I had bought, in the room I had painted, and pulled the quilt up to my chin. I expected to feel panic. I expected to feel the crushing weight of guilt that usually followed any attempt to set a boundary. I waited for the inner voice to tell me I was ungrateful, that I was cruel, that I was abandoning a widow, but the voice did not come. Instead, there was a strange, heavy silence. It was the silence of a contract being terminated. I realized that for the last 4 years, I had been holding up a ceiling that was designed to crush me. I had been the load-bearing wall for a structure that I was not allowed to inhabit. I closed my eyes. I did not sleep well. It was not a peaceful, fluffy sleep. It was a coma-like shutdown. It was the sleep of a soldier who has just finished digging a trench and knows the shelling is about to start. It was devoid of dreams. When I woke up, the afternoon sun was slanting through the blinds. The house was still quiet. Mom was probably at her bridge club. I got up and packed a single duffel bag. Just the essentials. My documents, my birth certificate, the deed to my car, my work uniforms. I was not running away. Running away implies you are scared. I was not scared. I was simply relocating my assets, and the most valuable asset I had, the only asset I had left to give, was my presence. I walked downstairs. I stood in the foyer for a moment. I listened to the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I listened to the air conditioning kicking on. Enjoy it while it lasts, I thought. I looked at the family photos on the wall, the shrine to Ethan, Marina, and Paige. They smiled down at me, frozen in their perfection. "Goodbye," I said. I did not shout it. I did not say it with tears. I said it the way you say goodbye to a telemarketer before you hang up the phone. I walked out the front door and locked it behind me. I used my key. I did not leave it under the mat. I kept it. I paid for the lock. After all, I got into my car and drove away. I did not look in the rearview mirror. I was not abandoning the house. I was just resigning from my position as its foundation. If the house crumbled without me, that was not an act of malice on my part. It was just a structural failure. And structural failures happen when you remove the only support beam that was actually doing any work. I drove toward Clearfield Crossing, the next town over. I had a plan. I had a new bank account, and for the first time in my life, I had a definition of family that did not include being a martyr. I was done paying for a seat at a table where I was not welcome. From now on, I would eat alone, but at least I would be the one holding the fork. My new kingdom was 450 square feet of beige carpet and a window that looked out onto the back alley of a dry cleaner. It was located in Clearfield Crossing, a town 10 miles west of Briar Glen. If Briar Glen was where people lived to show off their manicured lawns, Clearfield Crossing was where people lived to be close to the highway. It was a transient place. It was a place of neon signs that flickered, and apartment complexes with names like The Meadows, that contained absolutely no meadows. But when I turned the key in the lock of apartment 4B, I felt a rush of oxygen hit my brain that was purer than anything I had breathed in the colonial house on Elm Street. The air here smelled like industrial detergent and someone cooking garlic in the unit next door. It did not smell like potpourri. It did not smell like the anxiety of keeping up appearances. I put my duffel bag on the floor. I had a mattress I had bought from a discount store, a single plate, a single fork, and a coffee maker. I did not have a television. I did not have internet yet. The first thing I did was drive to the local mobile carrier store. The clerk was a teenager with bored eyes and chewing gum. "I need a new number," I told him. "You want to port your old one?" he asked, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. "It is easier to keep your contacts." "No," I said. "I want a new number, a local area code, and I want the old one disconnected immediately." "You will lose your messages," he warned. "That is the point," I said. When I walked out of that store with a new SIM card, I felt lighter. The digital tether that had bound me to Janice Mercer's whims was cut. No more guilt-tripping texts at 2 a.m, no more notifications about family dinners I was not invited to. I was a ghost in the machine. My next stop was the HR office at Frostvale Kitchens. Monica Vale was the plant manager. She was a woman built like a tank, with gray hair cropped short and a voice that could cut through the noise of 10 conveyor belts. She had always frightened me a little. I used to try to make myself small when she walked the floor, but today, I walked into her office and sat down without waiting to be asked. "Mercer," she said, looking up from a stack of safety reports. "You look different. You cut your hair?" "No," I said. I moved out. Monica raised an eyebrow. She did not ask for details. She was not that kind of boss. "Good for you. Rent is cheaper in Clearfield." "I saw a flyer in the break room a few months ago," I said. "About tuition reimbursement. Is that still active?" Monica leaned back in her chair. The springs creaked. She looked at me for a long moment, studying my face. "It is," she said. "Up to $3,000 a semester for approved courses. Why? You want to take an art class?" "No," I said. "I want to study industrial safety and process optimization at Clearfield Technical Institute." Monica actually smiled. It was a rare, terrifying sight. "Process optimization. You want to learn how to tell me I am running my line wrong?" "I want to learn how to run it better," I said. "Bring me the enrollment papers," she said. "If you pass with a B or better, the company pays. If you fail, it is on you." "I will not fail," I said. I started classes 2 weeks later. Clearfield Technical Institute was not an Ivy League school. It did not have ivy-covered walls or rowing teams. It was a converted warehouse with fluorescent lighting and vending machines that dispensed lukewarm soda. The students were not 18-year-olds in pajamas. They were 40-year-old electricians trying to get certified, single mothers trying to get into medical billing, and factory workers like me. I sat in the front row of Introduction to Industrial Systems. I opened a fresh notebook. The textbook was thick and heavy. It was full of diagrams of hydraulic lifts, flowcharts of supply chains, and chapters on OSHA compliance. 6 months ago, I would have looked at this book and thought it was written in alien hieroglyphs. I would have thought, this is for smart people. This is for Ethan. This is for Paige. But as I started reading, something strange happened. The words made sense. They were not abstract theories. They were describing the world I lived in every night. When the book talked about bottlenecks in production flow, I saw the lasagna tray dispenser that always jammed at 3 a.m. When it talked about ergonomic hazards, I felt the ache in my own lower back. I was not just studying, I was decoding my own life. Tasha became my co-pilot in this new existence. Since we were on the same night shift, we carpooled to the evening classes. "You look like a nerd," Tasha said one Tuesday night, watching me highlight a paragraph about fire safety protocols while she drove my beat-up sedan. "Shut up," I said, but I was smiling. "Listen to this. Did you know that the turning radius on the forklift you drive is actually inefficient for the aisle width in Sector 4? "I know that," Tasha laughed. "I have been scraping paint off the racks for 5 years. I did not need a book to tell me the aisle is too narrow." "But there is a formula for it," I said, tapping the page. "There is a reason why it happens. It is not just bad luck, it is bad math." That was the revelation. My mother's house operated on emotion and manipulation. The factory operated on math and physics. Math and physics did not care if you were popular. They did not care if you were pretty. They only cared if you were right. One night, after a particularly grueling exam on electrical schematics, my professor, Mr. Henderson, asked me to stay after class. Mr. Henderson was a man who wore grease-stained polo shirts and had missing fingers on his left hand from a mishap in the 90s. He did not give compliments freely. "Mercer," he said, handing back my test. It had a 98 written on the top in red ink. "You have a weird brain." I froze. "Is that bad?" "No," he grunted. "Most people look at a machine and see a magical box that makes things. You look at it and see the sequence. You are a systems thinker. We do not get many of those." Systems thinker. I walked out of that classroom holding the test paper like it was a winning lottery ticket. My mother had called me lost. She had called me slow to launch. She had told the neighbors I was finding my direction. Mr. Henderson, a stranger with missing fingers, had seen me more clearly in 6 weeks than my family had in 27 years. This newfound confidence started to bleed into my work at Frostvale. I was not just a body on the line anymore. I was observing. I was analyzing. I was promoted to line lead for the night shift. It came with a $1.50 raise and a clipboard. It also came with the responsibility of managing 12 people who were tired, cold, and cranky. One night, a fight broke out between 2 packers. It was over a missing pair of insulated gloves. Voices were raised. Shoving started. In the past, I would have run to find a manager. I would have been terrified of the conflict, but this time, I stepped in. "Stop," I said. My voice was not loud, but it was steady. "We are losing production time. Davis, take the spare gloves from the locker. Miller, get back to the seal check. If the line stops for 5 minutes, we all leave 5 minutes later in the morning. Do you want to go home, or do you want to argue?" They looked at me. They looked at the clock. They went back to work. I did not scream. I did not appeal to their emotions. I gave them a logical choice, and they respected it. But the real turning point came with the conveyor belt. For years, the intersection between the freezing tunnel and the packaging room had been a nightmare. The trays of frozen lasagna would slide down a metal chute, hit a 90-degree turn, and pile up. Every 20 minutes, someone had to stop the line, reach in with a hook, and unclog the pasta jam. It slowed us down. It damaged the product. It was dangerous. Management had tried to fix it. They had increased the speed. They had decreased the speed. Nothing worked. I spent 3 nights watching the jam happen. I stood there with my clipboard, ignoring the cold, just watching the physics of the sliding trays. I realized the problem was not the speed. It was the friction. The trays were hitting the guardrail at an angle that caused them to spin. I went to the maintenance shed. I found a piece of scrap high-density polyethylene plastic. I cut it into a curved triangle shape. "What are you doing?" Tasha asked, watching me with a wrench in her hand. "I am going to void the warranty on the conveyor," I said. I bolted the piece of plastic onto the corner of the guardrail. It acted as a guide, gently nudging the trays into the turn before they could hit the wall and spin. We turned the machine on. The first tray slid down. It hit my plastic guide. It turned smoothly. The second tray followed. Smooth. The third. Smooth. We watched for an hour. No jams. By the end of the shift, our output numbers were up by 15%. We had not stopped the line once. When Monica Vale came in for the morning shift, she looked at the production report. Then she walked out to the floor and looked at my crude plastic modification. She ran her hand over the bolt I had installed. "You did this?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I can take it off if it is a violation." Monica looked at me. She looked at the counter on the machine that showed record throughput. "Violation?" she scoffed. "Mercer, this is the smartest thing anyone has done in this building in 5 years. The engineers from corporate were here last month and they suggested a $10,000 sensor system. You fixed it with a piece of scrap plastic." She looked me right in the eye. "This," she said, tapping the plastic guide, "is worth more than a church speech. This is real value." I felt a flush of heat rise in my cheeks. It was not embarrassment, it was pride. Worth more than a church speech. She did not know about my mother. She did not know about the deaconess who cared more about how things looked than how they worked, but her words struck the exact center of my wound and began to cauterize it. I smiled. It was a genuine smile, one that reached my eyes. "Thanks, Monica," I said. That morning, Tasha and I sat in my car in the parking lot of Clearfield Technical Institute. We were drinking coffee from a gas station. We had not slept in 24 hours. My eyes were burning, and my hands were covered in grease. "You know," Tasha said, breaking the silence, "you are different." "I am tired," I said. "No," she said. "You are not apologizing anymore. You used to apologize for taking up space. You used to say sorry when you walked into a room." I thought about that. I thought about the girl who used to hide in the laundry room at family parties. I thought about the girl who paid bills in secret so her mother would not have to face reality. I looked out the window at the brick facade of the school. "I do not have anything to apologize for," I said. I realized then that my hunger for my family's approval had been a form of starvation. I had been begging for crumbs at a banquet where I was not welcome. But here, in Clearfield, in the noise and the dirt and the exhaustion, I was full. I was fed by my own competence. I was fed by the respect of people who judged me by my output, not my outfit. I did not need to sit at the successful kids' table. I did not need a mother who bragged about me to the garden club. I needed this. I needed a world where I could look at a problem, fix it, and know that I had done it with my own 2 hands. I looked at my phone. It was still silent. No notifications from the block numbers. I tossed the phone onto the dashboard. "Let's go," I said to Tasha. "I do not want to be late for class." I opened the car door and stepped out into the cool morning air. Briar Glen felt like a million miles away. And for the first time, I did not look back towards the east, where my mother's house stood on its perfectly manicured hill. I looked forward, toward the open door of the warehouse school. That was my world now, and it was beautiful. The hallway of the Clearfield Technical Institute smelled like lemon floor wax and old paper. It was a specific scent that belonged to public education buildings built in the 1970s, a mixture of industrial cleanliness and lingering dust. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed with a low, electric buzz that sounded like a headache waiting to happen. It was 10 o'clock at night. The corridors were mostly empty, save for the janitor pushing a wide mop bucket and a few stragglers from the welding certification program who looked as exhausted as I felt. I was standing by the vending machines, digging in my pocket for 3 quarters to buy a bag of pretzels. My stomach was growling. I had come straight from work to class, and the only thing I had eaten since sunrise was a granola bar. "Kendall?" The voice was soft, hesitant, and familiar enough to make my spine stiffen. I froze. The coin in my hand felt cold. I did not turn around immediately. For a second, I calculated the odds of hallucinating. I was in the next town over. I was in a building that specialized in HVAC repair and supply chain logistics. This was not the natural habitat of a mercer. I turned slowly. Standing near the trophy case, which held dusty bowling trophies from 1998, was my sister Paige. She looked wrong. The Paige I knew was a study in manicured perfection. She was the law student who wore blazers to class. She was the girl whose hair was always blown out in soft, glossy waves. But the girl standing 20 feet away from me looked like she had been through a dryer cycle on high heat. She was wearing a gray oversized hoodie that swallowed her frame. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, with loose strands falling over her forehead, but it was her eyes that stopped me. They were red-rimmed and shadowed with dark circles that looked like bruises against her pale skin. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My voice was flat. I did not offer a hug. I did not smile. I stood my ground by the vending machine like I was guarding a fortress. Paige took a step forward, then stopped, sensing the invisible wall I had put up. She looked at her sneakers. "I have a class," she said, "at the community college annex down the street, advanced litigation skills. It gets out at 9:30. "This is the Technical Institute," I said, "not the annex." "I know," she said. She looked up at me, and her expression was a mix of defiance and misery. "I walked over. I saw your car in the lot, the one with the rust spot." I nodded. Of course she recognized the rust. It was the eyesore Mom had complained about. "So you are stalking me," I said. "No," Paige said quickly. I wanted to see if it was really you. I saw you walking in last week, but I was on the bus. I thought I was imagining things. Kendall Mercer studying industrial safety?" "It is systems management," I said. "And why do you care?" She flinched. It was a small movement, a tightening of her shoulders. But I saw it. I dropped the quarters into the machine. Clink, clink, clink. I pressed the button for the pretzels. The coil turned slowly, agonizingly. Before the bag fell with a soft thud, I bent down to retrieve it. "If Mom sent you to inspect my living conditions so she can gossip about them at Bridge Club, you can tell her I am fine. I have a roof, I have food, and I have a grade point average that would make her head spin. Not that she would understand the subject matter." "Mom does not know I am here," Paige said. Her voice cracked. "Nobody knows I am here." I opened the bag of pretzels and leaned against the wall. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was vibrating with anxiety. She looked like a wire pulled so tight it was about to snap. "Okay," I said. "You are here. Talk." Paige looked around the empty hallway, as if checking for eavesdroppers. "I saw the text," she said. "The Mother's Day text." I chewed a pretzel slowly. "Which part? The part where I was not invited, or the part where everyone pretended I did not exist?" "I wanted to say something," Paige said. The words came out in a rush. "I swear. Kendall, I saw the list of tags and I felt sick. I started typing a message asking where you were. But I was with Ethan. We were studying at the library. He saw me typing, and he took my phone." "He took your phone," I repeated. He said, "Do not complicate things, Paige." She mimicked Ethan's authoritative doctor voice perfectly. He said Mom was already stressed about the reservations and that bringing you up would just cause a scene. He said you were probably working anyway and that we should just let her have her day. "And you listened," I said. "I am the youngest," she said weakly. "He is the oldest. You know how it is." "I know how it used to be," I corrected her. "I do not live in that hierarchy anymore." I looked at her, and for a moment, the anger flared. It was not the hot, explosive anger of a fight. It was the cold, disappointed anger of a judge looking at a repeat offender. "So you let them erase me because it was convenient," I said. And now you are here. Why? To clear your conscience? To get me to say it is okay so you can sleep tonight? Paige wiped her nose with the sleeve of her hoodie. It was such a childish, unpolished gesture that it softened me slightly. Just slightly. It is not okay, she whispered. I know it is not okay. The dinner was awful. Kendall, we sat there for 3 hours, and Mom just talked about appearances. She made us take 50 photos until the lighting was perfect. She made Marina change her lipstick because it was too aggressive. It felt like a performance. It always feels like a performance. That is the price of admission, I said. You want the praise. You do the show. I am tired of the show, Paige said. She leaned back against the trophy case, sliding down until she was crouching on the floor. She put her head in her hands. I hate law school. I hate it. I want to be a social worker. I want to work with foster kids. But Mom says social workers are poor and depressing. She says, Mercers are leaders, not helpers. So here I am, $80,000 in debt, studying torts and contracts, and I am miserable. I looked down at my sister, the successful one, the one who was going places. She looked like a trapped animal. I walked over and sat down on the floor next to her. The linoleum was cold and hard. We sat there in the hallway of the technical school, 2 refugees from the same war, but fighting on different fronts. You have a choice, I said. You are 24. You are an adult. I can't just leave, she said, her voice muffled by her hands. She pays my rent. She co-signed my loans. Then you are an employee, I said. Just like I was, except you are paid in approval and I was paid in silence. Paige lifted her head. Her eyes were wet. Where have you been, Kendall? Mom says... She stopped. What does Mom say? I asked. Tell me exactly. Paige hesitated. She bit her lip. She tells people at church that you are going through a crisis. She says you are ashamed of your job and that you pulled away because you felt inadequate compared to us. She plays the victim. She says, I pray for Kendall every day to find her pride again. She makes it sound like you are hiding in a hole somewhere because you can't face the family's brilliance. I laughed. It was a short, dry bark of a laugh. That is brilliant, I said. She spun it. I leave because she treated me like garbage, and she turns it into me leaving because I am jealous. It is working, Paige said. People pity her. They bring her casseroles because her daughter is lost. But what? But it is getting harder for her to keep the story straight, Paige said. She turned to look at me. People are asking specific questions. Mrs. Gable asked why your car is gone if you are just taking space. And the other day, at the grocery store, someone asked why you weren't at the Memorial Day picnic. Mom turned bright red. She hates not having the perfect answer. Good, I said. Let her squirm. There is something else, Paige said. She lowered her voice, even though the hallway was empty. She is panicked about money. I mean, really panicked. I know, I said. I stopped paying the bills. Paige's eyes widened. You... what? I was paying the electric, the cable, the internet, the water, the gap in the mortgage. I stopped. Paige stared at me with open mouth. I thought Dad left enough money for the house upkeep. Dad left debt, I said. I was the one keeping the lights on, literally. Paige shook her head, as if trying to rearrange her entire understanding of the world. So that explains it. Last week, I was home doing laundry, and I heard her on the phone with the bank. She was shouting. She was saying, I am Janice Mercer. I have been a customer for 30 years. She sounded scared. Kendall. She should be, I said. Reality is expensive. She mentioned papers, Paige said. She was rummaging through Dad's old filing cabinet in the study. She kept saying, Where is the deed? Where is the trust document? And then she said something to herself. She said, I can't sell it without the signature. My heart skipped a beat. I can't sell it without the signature. I knew exactly what that meant. My father, in his infinite, chaotic wisdom, must have set up a safeguard. He knew Mom. He knew she would liquidate everything to maintain her image. He must have put my name on the title, or on a trust that controlled the title. She wants to sell the house? I asked. I think she wants to refinance, Paige said, or take out a line of credit, but she is stuck. She keeps asking if anyone has heard from you. Now I know why. It is not because she misses you. It is because she needs you to sign something. The confirmation settled in my chest. It was cold, but it was validating. She will not find me, I said. I changed my number. I moved. She is going to explode, Paige said. And she is going to take it out on us, on me. Then leave, I said. I can't, Paige cried. I am not brave like you. Kendall, I don't know how to be poor. I don't know how to live in a place like this. She gestured vaguely at the scuffed floor and the flickering lights. This place is not a prison, I said. It is a school, and my apartment is not a dungeon. It is mine. That is the difference. I stood up and brushed the pretzel crumbs off my pants. I offered a hand to Paige. She looked at it for a second, then took it. I pulled her up. She stood there, smoothing down her hoodie, trying to regain some semblance of the Mercer composure. Are you ever coming back? She asked. For Christmas? For birthdays? I don't know, I said honestly. Right now, the answer is no. I miss you, Paige said. And this time, I believed her. I miss having someone real in the house. You can be real, I said. You just have to stop reading the script she hands you. I looked at the clock on the wall. I have to go. I have a shift at midnight, and unlike you, I do not have a safety net. If I don't work, I don't eat. Paige looked at me with a new expression. It was not pity anymore. It was something closer to awe, or maybe fear. Kendall, she said as I turned to walk away. One question. Why didn't you scream at me? I ignored you too. I deserve it. I stopped and looked back over my shoulder. Because screaming is what Mom does, I said. I am done with drama. I am dealing in facts now. And the fact is, you are just as trapped as I was. You are just in a gilded cage instead of a service elevator. How do I get out? She whispered. I walked back to her. Just a few steps. I looked her dead in the eye. You have to be willing to be the bad guy, I said. If you want to be free, you have to accept that she will call you ungrateful. She will call you selfish. She will tell the whole church that you broke her heart. And you have to be okay with that. You have to value your own life more than her reputation. Paige shivered. I don't know if I can do that. Then enjoy the dinner parties, I said softly. I turned and walked down the long, empty hallway. My boots clicked against the linoleum. I did not look back again. I left my sister standing under the buzzing fluorescent lights, wrestling with the terrifying realization that the price of her mother's love was her own soul. I walked out into the cool night air of the parking lot. My car was there, rust spot and all. It looked beautiful to me. It was a machine that worked. It was a system I understood. I got in, started the engine, and drove toward the factory. I had trays to inspect. I had a process to optimize. I had a life to build. One bolt, $1, 1 hour at a time. And for the first time, I knew something my sister didn't. I knew that the rust on the car didn't matter if the engine was sound. But the rot in the Mercer house? That went all the way to the foundation. And no amount of paint was going to fix it. The clip on my belt that held my radio was heavy. It was a tangible weight, a constant reminder that my center of gravity had shifted. 3 months ago, I was invisible. I was a pair of hands in a line of 50 other pairs of hands. But now, I was a voice. I had been promoted to line lead for the new Summer Harvest Frozen Vegetable Initiative. It came with a raise. I was now making $28 an hour. To the people in my mother's country club, $28 an hour was what they paid the person who walked their golden retrievers. But to me, it was a fortune. It was rent. It was gas. It was the ability to walk into a grocery store and buy the brand-name detergent without checking the price per ounce. The promotion did not mean I stopped working, it meant I worked harder. But the nature of the work had changed. I was no longer just fighting the cold. I was fighting the chaos. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. The facility was humming with the frantic energy of a quota deadline. We had 4,000 units of corn and peppers that needed to be flashed frozen, bagged, boxed, and palletized before the trucks arrived at 5. "Hey, Mercer." I turned. It was Davis, one of the newer packers. He looked panicked. "The label printer on line 3 is jamming again. It is chewing up the ribbon." In my old life, in the house on Elm Street, a crisis meant silence. It meant hiding the problem so Mom would not get a migraine. It meant absorbing the stress so the successful people could remain undisturbed. Here, a crisis was just a puzzle to be solved. I walked over to line 3. I did not yell. I did not sigh dramatically. I opened the casing of the printer. I saw the problem immediately. The tension roller was too tight for the new glossy labels we were using. "Back off the tension screw by 2 turns, I told Davis, "and clean the sensor eye with an alcohol wipe. It is reading dust as a paper jam." Davis looked at me, then at the machine. He did as I asked. He wiped the sensor. He adjusted the screw. He hit the reset button. The machine whirred to life. The labels started spitting out in a perfect, rhythmic stream. "How did you know that?" Davis asked, relief washing over his face. "I read the manual," I said, "and I spent 4 years staring at it while I packed lasagna." I patted him on the shoulder. "Good catch. Davis, keep it moving." That was the difference. In my family, authority was used to belittle. My mother used her status as the matriarch to make us feel small, to remind us of our debts to her. I used my authority to make the work easier. I spoke to the crew like they were human beings, not gears. I knew their names. I knew that Sarah on line 4 had a sick toddler. I knew that Mike on the forklift was saving for a wedding. I treated them with the dignity that had been stripped from me every time I walked through my mother's front door. And in return, they gave me something I had never tasted before: loyalty. When I asked them to pick up the pace, they did it. Not because they feared me, but because they knew I was right there in the trenches with them, wearing the same steel-toed boots, breathing the same refrigerated air. But the real shift happened on a Thursday afternoon. I had come in early for a meeting with Monica Vale. She had told me to wear a collared shirt. I wore a clean flannel button-down and my best dark jeans. I sat in the conference room, which smelled faintly of lemon pledge and stale coffee. Monica was there. So was the plant director, a man named Mr. Henderson, no relation to my teacher, and 2 faces I did not recognize on a large video screen on the wall. They were engineers from the corporate headquarters in Chicago. "This is Kendall Mercer," Monica said, introducing me. "She is the one who modified the intake rail on line 7. The engineers on the screen leaned in. One of them, a man with thick glasses, looked at the diagram on his desk. "Ms. Mercer," he said, "we have been reviewing the throughput data from your facility. The jam rate on that conveyor has dropped to near 0. You used a high-density polyethylene wedge?" "Yes," I said. My voice was steady. I was not asking for permission to speak. I was the expert in the room. The friction coefficient of the metal rail was too high for the frozen trays. They were catching the edge. The plastic reduces the drag and guides the corner into the turn. "It is a simple solution," the engineer said. He sounded almost annoyed that he had not thought of it. "We were looking at a sensor-based diverter arm that would have cost $15,000 per unit. My piece of plastic cost about 40 cents, I said, and I found it in the scrap bin." "Mr. Henderson chuckled. The engineers did not laugh, but they nodded. "We are going to adopt this modification as a standard operating procedure for all lines with this configuration," the engineer said. "We are calling it the Mercer Guide in the technical documentation." I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was not the fluttering of excitement. It was the solid, heavy thud of validation. The Mercer Guide. My name. My name was going to be in a manual. My name was going to be used to solve a problem in factories I would never visit. There is a bonus for accepted process improvements, Monica said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. $500 and a certificate of innovation for your personnel file. I looked at the check. $500. It was not $1 million. It was not a Nobel Prize. It was not a residency at a teaching hospital or a directorship at a marketing firm. But it was mine. I had not inherited it. I had not married into it. I had not charmed someone at a cocktail party to get it. I had looked at a broken thing, understood why it was broken, and fixed it with my own hands. "Thank you," I said. "Keep it up, Mercer." "Mr. Henderson said, "We need eyes like yours." I walked out of that meeting and drove straight to my apartment. I did not call my mother. I did not call Ethan or Marina. I knew what they would say. They would say, "That is nice, dear, but it is just a factory thing." They would minimize it. They would make it small so they could stay big. I did not need them to see it. I saw it. That night, I sat at my small kitchen table with my laptop. I felt a need to document this, not for a diary, but for something public. I had been reading the Tri-County Labor Voice, a small free newsletter that was stacked by the door of the grocery store in Clearfield. It was full of ads for unions and stories about local town council meetings. I opened a blank document. I titled it, "The Dignity of the Gear." I wrote about the invisible workforce. I wrote about the people who work while the world sleeps. I wrote about the shame that society projects onto blue-collar work, the assumption that if you work with your hands, it is because your mind failed you. I wrote, "We are told that success looks like a clean suit and a corner office. We are told that if we smell like machine oil or onions or sanitizer, we have missed the boat, but the boat does not move without the engine, and the engine is dirty." I used to apologize for the grease under my nails. I used to hide my boots, but I learned that the world does not run on speeches or press releases. It runs on friction and physics, and the people who know how to fix the jam at 3 a.m. Success is not just being seen. Success is knowing that if you walked away, the machine would stop. I proofread it once. I sent it to the email address listed in the back of the newsletter. I did not expect anything. I thought maybe the editor would delete it. 2 weeks later, Tasha walked into the break room holding a copy of the Labor Voice. "You are famous," she said, slamming the paper down on the table. There it was, page 3, "The Dignity of the Gear" by Kendall Mercer. "You wrote this?" Tasha asked. She looked serious. "Yeah," I said, suddenly feeling shy. "I was just venting. Read the comments," Tasha said. She pulled out her phone and opened the newsletter's Facebook page. I scrolled through the post. There were dozens of comments. Finally, someone said it, "I am a welder and my in-laws treat me like a dropout." "This girl gets it. Respect from the night crew at the rail yard." "I cut this out and put it on my fridge. Thank you. Kendall." I read the names. These were not the people from the country club. These were the people who kept the town alive. These were the mechanics, the nurses' aides, the truck drivers. I felt a lump in my throat. This was not the polite applause of a church congregation. This was a chorus of shared experience. I had connected. I had validated them. And in doing so, they had validated me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Paige. I had not blocked Paige, but we kept our distance. She was still my spy behind enemy lines. "Mom is freaking out," the text read. "Mrs. Gable saw your article. Apparently, Mrs. Gable's son is a plumber and he loved it. He showed it to his mom, and she asked Mom if she had read her daughter's powerful essay." I smiled. I could imagine the scene. Janice Mercer, cornered in the produce aisle, forced to discuss an article that celebrated the very existence she tried to hide. "What did Mom say?" I texted back. "She turned purple," Paige replied. "She told Mrs. Gable that it was just a creative writing exercise and that you were being dramatic. But she is furious. She says you are embarrassing the family by airing dirty laundry. She asked why you couldn't write about something nice, like flowers or charity." I laughed out loud in the break room. Tell her the laundry is dirty because nobody else washed it, I typed. Then I deleted it. I did not need to be petty. The truth was doing the work for me. Let her be mad, I wrote instead. Let her live with the question. She can't control the story anymore. I think she is scared, Paige wrote. She realizes you are building a life that has nothing to do with her, and that scares her more than the factory job. I put the phone down. Paige was right. My mother's power came from being the gatekeeper. She controlled the definition of success. She decided who was worthy and who was not. But I had walked around the gate. I had built my own wall, and I was laying my own bricks. I looked down at my feet. I was wearing my work boots. They were scuffed at the toes. There was a stain on the leather from where I had dropped a container of hydraulic fluid last week. They were heavy. They were ugly. For years, I had looked at these boots and seen them as shackles. I had seen them as the weights that kept me from flying up to the heights where Ethan and Marina lived. But as I sat there, holding the check for $500 and the newsletter with my name in print, I saw them differently. They were not shackles. They were anchors. They kept me grounded. They protected me. When things fell, heavy things, sharp things, dangerous things, these boots took the impact so my bones did not have to. I stood up. The boots clumped solidly against the concrete floor. It was a good sound. It was the sound of traction. Hey, lead? Tasha called out from the doorway. Line 2 is waiting on your sign-off for the startup. I am coming, I said. I grabbed my clipboard. I clipped my radio to my belt. I walked out onto the floor, into the noise and the cold and the bright industrial light. I was Kendall Mercer. I was a line lead. I was a writer. I was a system optimizer. And for the first time in 27 years, I did not want to be anyone else. The phone on my kitchen counter buzzed at 2 p.m. It was a Tuesday, my day off, and the apartment was quiet in that lovely, deliberate way that only a space you pay for yourself can be. I looked at the screen. It was a number I did not recognize. The area code was local, from Briar Glen. I did not answer it. I had learned that answering unknown calls usually led to conversations I did not want to have. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. I waited for the little icon to appear, signaling that a message had been left. I pressed play. The voice that filled my small kitchen was smooth, cultured, and laced with a terrifying amount of passive aggression. Kendall, the voice said. It was my mother. She must have used a friend's phone or a burner, knowing I had blocked her main line. It is your mother. I am calling because Mrs. Gable showed me that article you wrote in that little worker's newsletter. She seemed to think it was charming, but I found it quite concerning. There are rumors. Kendall, people are saying the story about the invisible daughter sounds very specific. I just want to remind you that family business is private. We have a standing in this town. Please do not make us look like villains just because you are going through a rebellious phase. It reflects poorly on your brother and sisters. Call me when you are ready to be reasonable. Click. I stood there, holding a half-eaten apple. I replayed the message. Do not make us look like villains. Reflects poorly on your brother and sisters. There was no, I miss you. There was no, are you okay? There was no, I am proud of you for getting published. There was only damage control. She was not afraid of losing me. She had already lost me, and she had barely noticed. She was afraid of losing her audience. She was afraid that the carefully curated exhibit of the perfect Mercer family was getting a smudge on the glass. I did not delete the message. In the past, I would have deleted it to erase the pain. I would have tried to forget the tone of her voice. Instead, I opened my file manager. I saved the audio file. I renamed it file name, not underscore. An underscore apology, underscore 01.mp3. I dragged it into the folder labeled Receipts, right next to the screenshot of the Mother's Day exclusion. I sat down at my laptop. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, but I was feeling strong today. I logged into my email, the old one, the one I hadn't checked in months but hadn't deleted yet. The inbox was full of spam, but there were 2 emails from the last week that stood out. One was from Ethan. Subject: Stop the drama. I opened it. Kendall: Mom is a wreck. She is telling everyone she has migraines because of stress. I do not have time to diagnose her psychosomatic symptoms because I am actually saving lives in the ER. Whatever point you are trying to prove with this silence and these little articles, you have made it. Stop dramatizing everything. You are 27, not 17. Just apologize and come to dinner so we can get back to normal. I stared at the screen, dramatizing. To Ethan, my absence was a performance. To him, my pain was just noise that interrupted his important life. He did not ask why I left. He just wanted the inconvenience to stop. I opened the second email. It was from Marina. Subject: Checking in/advice. Hey Ken, hope you are good. Look, I saw the thing you wrote. It is cute that you are writing, but maybe pick a topic that is less gritty. It makes you sound desperate. Mom is really worried about what the neighbors think. If you just got a better haircut and maybe a job that does not require a uniform, she would be so proud. You know how she is. Just be a little more presentable, and this will all blow over. Love, M. Just be presentable. That was it. That was the thesis statement of my entire childhood. I leaned back in my chair. The anger that usually flared up didn't come. Instead, I felt a cold, clinical clarity. It was like looking at a blueprint and finally understanding why the building was structurally unsound. They did not love me. That sounds harsh, but it is not. It is just a fact, like gravity or the boiling point of water. They loved the role I played. They loved the helpful daughter. They loved the quiet sister. They loved the background character, who made their main character energy shine brighter. But they did not love Kendall. They did not love the woman who liked industrial safety manuals and steel-toed boots. They did not love the woman who had opinions, to be loved by them. I had to sign a contract. The terms were simple. Be small, be silent, be pretty. Pay the bills but don't ask for credit. I had breached the contract, and now they were suing for specific performance. My phone buzzed again. A text from Paige. Did you see the online comments on your article? I frowned. I had seen the Facebook comments on the newsletter's page. But Paige sent a link to a community forum, a Briar Glen Community Voice message board. Someone had shared my article there. I clicked the link. The discussion was heated. Some people were defending the traditional family values, saying that children owe their parents respect no matter what. But there was one comment, posted anonymously by a user named Law and Order 24. Respect is earned, not inherited, and success is not a measuring stick for how much your mother should love you. If you have to be a CEO to get a seat at the dinner table, that is not a family, that is a board meeting. I smiled. Law_and_order_24. It was Paige. It was a small rebellion. It was anonymous. It was safe, but it was there. She was starting to see the bars of the cage. She was not ready to break them yet, but she was rattling them. 2 days later, I received a phone call at work. It was from a woman named Sarah Jenkins. She ran the Briar County Community Center. Kendall, she said, I read your piece in the Labor Voice. It moved me. We are hosting a storytelling night this Friday. The theme is Crossing Lines. We would love for you to come and speak, just 10 minutes, about the themes in your article. My first instinct was to say no. I am not a speaker. I am a listener. I am a watcher. The idea of standing on a stage with a microphone made my palms sweat. I don't think so, I said. I am just a factory worker. That is exactly why we need you, Sarah said. We have enough lawyers and real estate agents telling stories. We need to hear from the people who actually build the town. I told her I would think about it. I spent the rest of the shift thinking about it. I thought about my mother's voicemail. Do not make us look like villains. If I spoke, was I doing it to hurt her? Was I doing it for revenge? I analyzed my motives like I analyzed a supply chain. If I stayed silent, I was protecting her lie. I was maintaining the facade that the Mercer family was perfect, and I was the broken one. If I spoke, I was telling the truth. The truth is not an attack. The truth is just what happened. If the truth makes them look like villains, that is because of their actions. Not my narration. I called Sarah back. I will do it. Friday night arrived. The community center was a converted gymnasium that smelled of floor wax and stale popcorn. There were about 50 people in the audience. They sat on folding metal chairs. I saw Tasha in the front row. She gave me a thumbs up. I saw faces I recognized from the grocery store. I saw the mechanic who fixed my car. I saw Mr. Henderson from the Technical Institute. I did not see my mother. I did not see Ethan or Marina. They would never set foot in a place like this. It was too local, too low rent. When Sarah called my name, I walked up to the microphone. The stand was too high. I had to lower it. The feedback squealed for a second, a sharp, piercing sound that made everyone wince. Sorry, I said. I am used to machines, not microphones. A few people laughed. The tension broke. I took a breath. I did not have notes. I had lived this story for 4 years. I did not need to memorize it. I used to think that love was a transaction, I began. My voice shook slightly, then steadied. I thought that if I paid enough bills, if I cleaned enough messes, if I stayed quiet enough, I would earn the right to be seen. The room went quiet. I did not use names. I did not say Janice Mercer. I did not say Ethan or Marina. I did not mention the address on Elm Street. I talked about the feeling. Imagine working a 12-hour shift, I said. Imagine your hands are frozen and your back is screaming. And you check your phone, hoping for a connection, and you see a picture of a dinner party, a celebration of success, and you are not there. Not because you couldn't make it, but because you weren't asked. I looked out at the audience. I saw a woman in the second row nodding. She looked tired. She looked like a mom who worked 2 jobs. I realized something that day, I continued. I realized that in some families, love is not a given. It is a ticket you have to buy, and the price of the ticket is your own identity. You have to be the person they want you to be. If you are a doctor, you get a front row seat. If you are a director, you get a VIP pass. But if you are the one who keeps the lights on, you are just the staff. I gripped the microphone stand. I decided to stop buying the ticket, I said. I decided that love should not be an admission fee. I decided that my dignity was worth more than a seat at a table where I was invisible, I finished. I am a factory worker. I inspect frozen vegetables, and I am proud of it, because the money I make now pays for a life that is actually mine. There was a moment of silence, then applause. It was not polite applause. It was loud. It was real. Tasha was whistling. The mechanic was clapping his hands over his head. I walked off the stage. My legs felt like jelly, but my heart was light. I did not know that someone was recording by the next morning. The video was on the local community Facebook group. It had 300 shares. The caption read, "Powerful words from a local worker about family and self-worth. Must watch." Paige texted me at noon. "It is everywhere. Kendall, the church group chat is exploding. Nobody is naming names, but everyone knows. Mom is hiding in her bedroom. She says she has a migraine." I looked at the video on my phone. I watched myself speaking. I looked strong. I looked real. I did not feel a rush of glee. I did not feel the manic high of revenge. I felt balance. For years, my mother had controlled the narrative. She had painted the picture of the saintly widow and her successful children, with the wayward daughter lurking in the shadows. I had simply turned on the lights. If the room looked messy, if the paint was peeling, if the structure was rotten, that was not my fault. I had just illuminated what was already there. I went to the receipts folder on my phone. I looked at the voicemail file. Not underscore, an underscore apology. I did not need to listen to it again. I knew what it was. It was the sound of a woman who had spent her life investing in image, realizing that image is a volatile currency. She had sown exclusion. She had sown shame. She had sown silence. Now, she was harvesting the truth. And the truth, much like the winter winds in Pennsylvania, does not care if you are wearing a coat. It just cuts right through. I put my phone down and went to the window. The view of the dry cleaner's alley was not glamorous. There were no manicured lawns. But it was real. Let her have her migraine, I said to the empty room. I had laundry to do, and for the first time in my life, I was only washing my own clothes. The envelope was waiting for me in the rusted metal mailbox of my apartment complex. It was a standard business envelope, white with a clear plastic window. But the return address made my pulse skip a beat. Bryan County Tax Assessment Office. My first thought was that there was a mistake. I lived in Clearfield Crossing now. I paid rent. I did not own property. I did not have anything to tax. I ripped it open right there in the hallway. Under the flickering fluorescent light, it was a delinquency notice. Property address, 42 Elm Street, Briar Glen, PA, owners of record, Janice Mercer / trust of Robert Mercer / Kendall Mercer. Amount due, $4,200. Status, second notice, past due. I stared at the name. Kendall Mercer. My name was on the tax bill for my mother's house. Not as a contact person, not as a resident. As an owner of record, I walked into my apartment and threw my keys on the counter. My hands were shaking. I had lived in that house for 4 years after Dad died. I had paid the electric bill, I had paid the water bill, but I had never seen a tax bill. Mom always said she handled the official paperwork. She said the taxes were paid from an escrow account linked to Dad's life insurance. I sat down at my laptop and typed in the URL for the Bryan County Recorder of Deeds. It is a public database. Anyone can look up anything if they know the parcel number. I found the parcel number on the tax notice. I entered it. The screen refreshed. There was the deed history. Transfer date, October 14th, 2019. Grantor, Robert Mercer. Estate. Grantee, Janice Mercer and Kendall Mercer, joint tenants with right of survivorship. My breath caught in my throat. October 14th, 2019. That was 2 weeks after Dad died. I remembered that day. I was in a fog of grief. Mom had taken me to a lawyer's office, a friend of hers from church. She had put a stack of papers in front of me. Just standard probate forms, honey, she had said, her eyes red with tears. We need to sign these to make sure the utilities don't get cut off. It just authorizes you to help me manage things. I had signed. I had signed everything she put in front of me because I was 23 and I trusted my mother. I clicked on the document image. It was a PDF of the deed transfer. There was my signature, and there was the clause, circled in red by whoever had scanned it. Any conveyance, mortgage, or lien against said property requires the signature of both joint tenants. I sat back in my chair, the plastic wheels rolling across the cheap carpet. My father knew, even from the grave. Robert Mercer knew his wife. He knew Janice would spend until the well ran dry. He knew she would mortgage the house to pay for vacations or new cars, or to keep up appearances at the country club. So he had built a failsafe. He had made me the co-pilot. He had locked the cockpit door and given me the second key. But Mom had never told me. She had let me believe I was just helping out. She had let me believe I was a squatter in her gracious home. Why? Because if I knew I owned half the house, I might have asked questions. I might have asked why we were repainting the guest room when the taxes were unpaid. I might have asked why we needed premium cable when the roof was leaking. She had hidden my ownership from me to keep me compliant. And now, she was in trouble. I looked at the tax bill again. Second notice. If she was behind on taxes, what else was she behind on? I picked up my phone and texted Paige. I need you to answer a question honestly. Has Mom been trying to sell the house? The reply came 3 minutes later. She has been meeting with a realtor, Mrs. Albright, but she comes home furious every time. She keeps saying, the paperwork is a mess. Why? Because she can't sell it, I typed back. Not without me. I sent Paige a screenshot of the deed. The ellipsis bubble appeared and disappeared for a full minute. Paige was processing. Oh my God, she finally wrote. She has been telling everyone that the sale is stalled because you ran off with important files. She is lying. She knows she needs your signature, and she is too proud to ask for it. Too proud to ask. That was Janice Mercer in 4 words. She would rather risk foreclosure than admit she needed her failure of a daughter to save her. But there was something else gnawing at me. The tax bill was $4,200. That was a lot of money. But it wasn't an impossible amount for someone with Mom's social standing, unless the money was gone. I remembered the roof repair fund from 2 years ago. I had given her $3,000 from my savings. I had worked double shifts for 4 months to scrape that together. She said the contractor needed cash up front. I went back to the county database. I searched for building permits. Address: 42 Elm Street. No permits found in the last 5 years. If there was no permit, there was no major roof repair. You cannot replace a roof in Briar Glen without a permit. The neighbors would report you in a heartbeat. The coldness in my chest spread to my limbs. She had taken my $3,000. She had probably used it to pay for Marina's engagement party venue deposit, or Ethan's graduation gift, or just to keep up the facade of affluence. I was not just a co-owner, I was a victim of embezzlement. I needed legal advice. I could not rely on Google for this. I found a lawyer in Clearfield Crossing. His name was Mr. Reynolds. His office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. He did not have mahogany furniture. He had a metal desk and a coffee stain on his tie. I sat in his office the next morning. I laid the tax bill and the deed printout on his desk. "Mr. Reynolds," I said, "I need to know what my exposure is." He put on his reading glasses. He looked at the papers. He hummed a little tune as he read. "Well, Ms. Mercer," he said, "congratulations. You own a house, or at least half of one." "I don't want it," I said. "I want to know if they can come after me for the taxes." "They can," he said. "You are on the deed. The county does not care who lives there. They care who is on the paper. If the taxes aren't paid, they will put a lien on the property. Eventually, they could force a sheriff's sale." "Can she sell it without me?" I asked. "No," he said, tapping the survivorship clause. "Not unless she forges your signature, which, given the stakes, is not unheard of." "She won't forge it," I said. "She is too afraid of getting caught. She cares about her reputation too much to go to jail." "Then she is stuck," Mr. Reynolds said. "She can't refinance. She can't sell. She can't take out a home equity loan. She is sitting on an asset she cannot liquidate because the other key holder has left the building." He looked at me over his glasses. "You have leverage, Ms. Mercer, a lot of it. What do you want to do?" I thought about it. What did I want? Did I want to force a sale? Did I want to evict my mother? Did I want to sue her for the $3,000 she stole? No. That would make me like them. That would make me vindictive. I wanted freedom. I wanted to be untethered from the sinking ship that was 42 Elm Street. "I want off the deed," I said. "I want to sever the tie, but I'm not going to just sign it over for free. I paid into that house. I paid taxes. I paid utilities. I paid for a roof that never happened." Mr. Reynolds nodded. "We can draft a quitclaim deed. You agree to transfer your interest to her. In exchange, you can demand compensation or indemnification." "I want a clean break," I said. "I want my name off the tax rolls, and I want her to acknowledge that I own half the house." "We can send a letter," Mr. Reynolds said. "A formal demand letter. It will wake her up." "Do it," I said. I left his office and drove to work. The sky was gray and heavy with impending rain. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from my bank. The new one. Direct deposit received. $1,150. It was my paycheck. It was safe. It was mine. But my mind was back at 42 Elm Street. I imagined Mom sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the same tax bill I had received. She must be terrified. The walls were closing in. The taxes were due. The roof was probably actually leaking now. And the one person who knew how to fix things, the one person who had the legal authority to bail her out, was the person she had erased from the family portrait. I parked my car at the factory. I sat there for a moment, listening to the rain start to drum against the roof. I realized something profound. Mom wasn't looking for me because she missed her daughter. She wasn't looking for me to apologize for Mother's Day. She wasn't looking for me to reconcile. She was looking for my hand. Specifically, my right hand, the one that held the pen. She needed my signature to save her lifestyle. And for the first time in my life, I held the pen. I held the power. I looked at my hand. It was calloused. The nails were short. It was a worker's hand. "You want my signature?" I whispered to the rain-streaked windshield. "You are going to have to ask for it, and you are going to have to ask me by my name." I got out of the car. I walked into the factory. I had a shift to run. I had a production line to manage. And somewhere in Briar Glen, Janice Mercer was realizing that you cannot erase someone and then expect them to sign your permission slip. I did not buy a gallon of gasoline and a box of matches. That is the amateur way to burn a bridge. It is messy and illegal, and it leaves you smelling like smoke. I chose a different weapon. I chose clarity. Mr. Reynolds, my lawyer with the coffee-stained tie, had been very specific about my position during our second meeting. He sat behind his metal desk and laid it out like a safety schematic. "If you sign a refinancing agreement," he said, tapping the desk with a pen, "you are validating the debt. You are taking ownership of every bad financial decision your mother has made in the last 4 years. You become jointly and severally liable. That means if she buys a new car instead of paying the mortgage, the bank comes for you. They garnish your wages. They ruin your credit." "I will not sign a loan," I said. "Good," he said. "But you have another right. Kendall, as a co-owner, you have the right to a full accounting. You have the right to know where the money went. You have the right to see the ledger." The ledger. That word stuck in my mind as I drove back to my apartment in Clearfield. My mother treated money like magic. It appeared when she needed to impress someone, and it vanished when a bill arrived. She relied on the fog of confusion to keep everyone in line. She relied on us being too polite to ask to see the receipts. I was done being polite. When I got home, there was a package sitting on my doorstep. It was a cardboard box, taped shut with excessive layers of packing tape. The return address was in my mother's handwriting. The loops of her letters were large and sweeping, demanding space. I brought it inside and set it on my kitchen table. I did not open it immediately. I made a cup of tea. I washed my hands. I treated it like a hazardous material sample at the factory. I cut the tape. Inside, nestled in pink tissue paper, were artifacts of a life I no longer recognized. There was a porcelain angel with a chipped wing that used to sit on my dresser when I was 10. There was a ribbon from a middle school track meet. Third place. There was a photo of me at Marina's graduation, looking uncomfortable in a dress that was too tight, smiling that fixed, panicked smile I used to wear. It was a curated collection of guilt. It was her way of saying, "Look at this history. Look at these memories. How can you abandon this?" At the bottom of the box was a letter. It was written on her personalized stationery, the heavy cream stock she spent too much money on. I sat down and read it. "My dearest Kendall, I am sending you these little treasures because I found them while cleaning and I was overcome with emotion. I realized how much you have drifted from us. I know you are going through a difficult time, and I know you are confused about your place in the world right now. I am not perfect. No mother is. But I have always done my best to give you children a life of dignity and standing. It hurts me deeply that you have chosen to misinterpret my love as pressure. You have misunderstood so much. Kendall, that dinner was never meant to exclude you. It was meant to protect you. I hear rumors. I hear you are telling strangers terrible things about this family. You are making me look like a monster to people who have known us for 30 years. You are embarrassing your brother and sisters. Is that what you want? To destroy everything I built? The house is in need of repairs. The roof is leaking in the study. The taxes are due. I need you to come home and sign the paperwork so we can secure the equity line. After all I have sacrificed for you, after all the years I put a roof over your head and food on your table, you should help me when I need it. It is the moral thing to do. Come home. Fix this. Love, Mom." I read it twice. I looked for the words, "I am sorry." I looked for the words. I was wrong. I looked for the words "I miss you." They were not there. Instead, there was gaslighting. "You are confused. You misunderstood. You are embarrassing us." And then, the demand. "You should help me. It is the moral thing to do." She was leveraging a morality she did not possess to extract a signature she did not deserve. She was holding a cracked porcelain angel in one hand and a demand for $50,000 in the other. I felt a coldness settle over me. It was the same cold focus I felt when I analyzed a jammed machine. I did not cry. I did not throw the box across the room. I took out my phone. I took a picture of the letter. I made sure the text was legible. I opened the folder on my phone labeled Receipts. I added the photo of the letter. It sat there next to the screenshot of the Mother's Day exclusion. It sat next to the audio file of her voicemail. It sat next to the tax delinquency notice from the county. It sat next to the PDF of the deed proving I owned half the house. This folder was not a scrapbook. It was an arsenal. My phone chimed. It was Paige. "Red alert," the text read. "She is calling Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert. She is crying on the phone. She is telling them that you have been brainwashed by the internet. She says you joined a cult or something. She is trying to get them to do an intervention. She wants them to show up at your apartment." I stared at the screen. A cult. That was rich. I had joined the cult of paying my own rent and expecting basic respect. "Let them come," I typed back. "I have a deadbolt." "She is desperate." "Ken," Paige wrote. "She met with the bank today. They told her no. They said the loan requires all owners to be present. She is cornered." I put the phone down. I needed to end this. I needed to stop the speculation and the rumors and the flying monkeys. I needed to state my position so clearly that even Aunt Linda, who believed everything she heard on Facebook, could not misinterpret it. I opened my laptop. I opened a blank document. I was not going to write a letter. Letters were for feelings. Letters were for negotiation. I was going to write a memo. I typed the header, "To Janice Mercer," from Kendall Mercer. Date, June 15th, 2026. Subject, financial and legal status of 42 Elm Street. I wrote, "I received your package and your letter. I am not confused. I am not in a crisis. I am working. I am paying my bills. And I am safe. Regarding the house at 42 Elm Street, I am aware that I am a co-owner on the deed. I am also aware that the property taxes are $4,200 in arrears. I am aware that there is no building permit on file for the roof repairs you claimed you did 2 years ago with the $3,000 I gave you. I will not sign a loan. I will not sign a refinancing agreement. I will not sign a line of credit that puts my credit score at risk for debts I did not incur. If you need financial assistance, here are my conditions. 1. I will not give you cash, ever. 2. If a repair is needed, you will send me the quote from a licensed contractor. I will verify the quote. I will pay the contractor directly for my share of the cost. I will not reimburse you. 3. If you cannot afford the house, we sell it. We sell it at market value. The proceeds will be split according to the deed. I will take my 50%. 4. You will stop discussing my employment and my mental health with the community. If you continue to spread false information, I will publish the tax records and the deed to correct the record. These terms are non-negotiable. Do not send Uncle Robert. Do not send Aunt Linda. Send a spreadsheet. I read it over. It was brutal. It was devoid of warmth, but it was honest. I hit send. Then I went into the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. My face looked different than it did 3 months ago. The dark circles under my eyes were gone. My skin looked clearer. My jaw looked tighter. I took a deep breath. "No," I said to my reflection. It sounded weak. "No," I said again, louder. "I will not sign. I will not pay. No." It is a small word, 2 letters, 1 syllable. But for 27 years, it had been the hardest word in the English language for me to pronounce. I had been trained to say yes. I had been trained to smooth things over. I had been trained to set myself on fire to keep my mother warm. "No," I said again, this time. It sounded like a gavel coming down. I walked back into the kitchen. The box of guilt was still sitting on the table. The chipped angel stared at me. I picked up the angel. I walked to the trash can. I hesitated. It was my history. It was a piece of my childhood, but my childhood was over. I dropped the angel into the trash. It made a sharp clatter as it hit the bottom of the bin. I felt a twinge of sadness, but it was fleeting. It was like the pinch of a needle when you get a vaccine. It hurts for a second, but you know it is preventing a sickness that could kill you. I looked at the clock. It was 8 in the evening. The storm was coming. My mother would read the email. She would scream. She would call Ethan. She would call Marina. They would blow up my phone. They would call me selfish. They would call me cold. Let them. I had built a shelter out of receipts and legal rights. I had reinforced the walls with my own paycheck. I was ready for the hurricane. Because for the first time, I wasn't standing outside in the rain waiting to be let in. I was inside my own house, and I had the only key. I set the timer on my phone for exactly 5 minutes. I sat at my kitchen table in Clearfield Crossing. The window was open, letting in the sounds of the summer night. A distant siren, the hum of traffic on the highway, the barking of a dog. It was a symphony of ordinary life, and I listened to it like it was Mozart. My heart was beating with a steady, rhythmic thrum. It was not the frantic fluttering of panic. It was the heavy, powerful beat of a hydraulic press coming down. I opened the messaging app on my phone. I went to the Mercer family group chat. I tapped unmute. The notifications flooded in instantly. It was like opening a dam. My phone vibrated violently against the table as weeks of suppressed messages tumbled out. "Where are you? Mom is crying. This is childish. Call us. We need to talk about the house." I did not read them all. I did not let myself get sucked into the whirlpool of their manufactured drama. I had a mission. I was here to deliver a package, sign the manifest, and leave. I selected the photo from my receipts folder, the screenshot from Mother's Day. The one with the caption, "Dinner for the Successful Kids." The one with the tags that included everyone but me. I hit send. Then I typed. My fingers moved across the glass with the precision of a pianist. "I am unmuting this chat for 5 minutes to clarify the record. On Mother's Day, everyone in this group saw that I was excluded. Nobody asked where I was. Nobody called. You all accepted the premise that I was not successful enough to be at the table. Do not rewrite history now and call it a misunderstanding. It was a choice." I hit send. I watched the bubbles appear immediately. Ethan was the first to reply. Of course he was. He was used to being the smartest person in the room. "Kendall, stop this. You are being selfish. Mom is under immense pressure and you are playing victim games with screenshots. We are adults. We move on. Pick up the phone." Then Marina, the peacemaker, the PR specialist. "Ken, honey, we can fix this. Mom didn't mean it like that. She was just focusing on career milestones that night. We all love you. Let's meet for coffee. Just the 3 of us sisters. And talk it out. No lawyers needed." I looked at their words. Selfish. Victim games. No lawyers needed. They were terrified. They were scrambling to get the genie back in the bottle because they realized the bottle was actually the deed to the house. And I was holding the cork. I typed again. "I will not meet for coffee. I will not answer phone calls. I will not be gaslighted into believing that my memory is wrong. Any conversation regarding the property at 42 Elm Street will go through my lawyer. Mr. Reynolds, he has sent a demand letter to Mom. Read it." Ethan replied instantly. "A lawyer? Seriously? You are suing your own mother? After everything she did for you?" I did not flinch. I did not feel the old guilt rising up to choke me. I felt a cold, sharp anger. "I am not suing her," I wrote. "I am protecting myself. And here is the reality check you all need. Mom is not looking for me because she wants to reconcile. She is looking for me because she needs to refinance the house. She needs a signature, and she can't sell it or borrow against it without me. I know I am on the deed." The chat went silent. The bubbles stopped. The typing indicators vanished. It was the silence of a bomb squad realizing they had cut the wrong wire. for years. Mom had hidden the truth of the deed from them. She had let them believe she was the sole queen of the castle. She had let them believe I was just a tenant. Now, they were realizing that the failure sister was actually the co-owner of the estate. Then, my phone screen changed. Incoming call. Mom, blocked. It went straight to voicemail. Incoming call. Mom, blocked. She was panicking. She was realizing that she could not charm her way out of this. She could not bully her way out of this. She was hitting a wall of solid steel. I looked at the timer. 2 minutes left. I typed my final offer. The taxes are $4,200 past due. The roof is leaking. Mom has no income. Here are your options. Option A. You sell the house. We split the proceeds 50-50 as the deed dictates. Mom downsizes to an apartment she can actually afford. Option B. Ethan and Marina. You are the successful ones. You have the careers. You have the bonuses. You buy out my share. You pay off the taxes. You fix the roof. You become the safety net. I paused. Then I added the kicker. I am retiring from the position of family savior. I am not the backup plan anymore. I watched the screen. Ethan wrote, I have student loans. I can't take on a mortgage. Marina wrote, I just bought the condo in the city. My liquidity is tied up. I laughed. A short, sharp sound in the empty kitchen. There it was. The truth. They loved the idea of the family estate, but they did not want to pay for it. They wanted the prestige of the Mercer name without the cost of the Mercer upkeep. They had been happy to let me ruin my credit and my back to keep the illusion alive. But the moment the bill landed on their desk, they pleaded poverty. Then, a new message appeared. It was from Paige. Paige, who was sitting in that house right now. Paige, who was watching Mom pace the floor. Paige wrote, Mom is screaming. She says you are ungrateful. She says she gave you life. I hesitated. This was it. The final emotional manipulation. The card every parent plays when they have run out of logic. I birthed you. Therefore I own you. I could have just blocked them. I could have walked away. But I needed to say one last thing. Not for them. For me. For the girl who used to hide in the laundry room. I typed my response to Paige, knowing they were all reading it. Tell her I said this. She taught me that love in this house is conditional. It is based on success. It is based on image. It is based on what you can bring to the table. I am just following the rules she set. I am not successful enough to be at her dinner, so I am certainly not successful enough to pay her debts. Then Paige typed something that made me stop breathing for a second. Paige wrote, I just told her. I told her, Mom, you chose who to brag about. Now you have to choose who to ask for help. I stared at the screen, my little sister, the one who was terrified of conflict, the one who wanted to be a social worker. She had stood up. She had found her voice in the middle of the hurricane. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was not a tear of sadness. It was a tear of relief. The chain was broken. I looked at the timer. 10 seconds. Goodbye, I typed. I hit mute. I hit block on the group chat. I hit block on Ethan. I hit block on Marina. I left Paige open. Just Paige. I put the phone down on the table. The screen went black. The silence in the apartment was absolute. But it was not empty. It was full of possibility. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the alley behind the dry cleaner. A stray cat was sitting on a dumpster, watching me. It is done, I whispered. I did not feel a surge of triumph. I did not feel like a conqueror standing over a defeated army. I felt like someone who had finally put down a heavy backpack after hiking for 20 miles. My shoulders felt light. My chest felt open. The next morning, I went to work early. The sun was just coming up over the industrial park. The sky was a bruised purple that was fading into gold. I parked my rusted sedan next to Tasha's truck. I walked into the locker room. I put on my white coat. I put on my hairnet. I tied my steel-toed boots. I walked out onto the floor. The machines were humming. The conveyor belts were moving. The air smelled of sanitizer and frozen onions. "Morning, Led," Davis called out. "Morning, Davis," I said. "Check the temperature on line 4. "It looks a little high." "On it," he said. I walked the line. I checked the seals. I checked the dates. I checked the Mercer guide on the rail. Watching the trays slide smoothly around the corner, I thought about my mother. She was probably sitting in her kitchen, surrounded by premium appliances she couldn't afford, waiting for a phone call that would never come. She was trapped in a prison of her own making. A prison built of pride and judgments and fear of what the neighbors would think. I was here, in a factory, in a hairnet, and I was free. I had friends who knew my real face. I had a bank account that only I could access. I had a sister who was starting to wake up. And I had a future that I was building with my own 2 hands. I did not need a seat at the table. I did not need a reservation at the Gilded Oak. I had built my own table. It was made of stainless steel, and it was covered in checklists and production schedules. But it was mine. I looked at the clock on the wall. The shift was just beginning. I took a deep breath of the cold, recycled air. It tasted like freedom. And for the first time in my life, I did not wait for permission to start. I just pressed the green button, and I watched the world move forward. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It was not an easy one to tell, but it was a necessary one to live. I am curious, where are you listening to this story from right now? Are you on your way to a job that people undervalue? Are you sitting in a house that feels like a stage set? Or are you, like me, finally finding your own footing in a place you never expected? Tell me in the comments below. I read them all. And if you want to hear more stories about people taking back their power, please subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel. Hit that like button to show your support, and smash the hype button so this story can reach anyone else who needs to know that they have the right to disappear from a life that hurts them. Stay strong, and remember, check the deed.